Bienvenue.
Welcome to the 8th meeting of the Standing Committee on Science and Research.
Internal economy requires that committees adhere to the following health protocols, the same ones that have been in place, but they are now in effect until June 23rd, 2022. If you have questions, please contact our clerk of the committee for further information on preventative measures for health and safety, but they are the same ones that have been in place. As the chair, I will enforce these measures, and I really thank you all for your cooperation. We have a really lovely committee. La réunion d'aujourd'hui.
Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of November 4, 2021.
Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You may speak in the official language of your choice. At the bottom of your screen, you may choose to hear floor audio or in English or French. The raise hand feature is on the main toolbar should you wish to speak. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair, and when you're not speaking, your microphone should be muted. The committee clerk and I will maintain a speaking list for all members. We are delighted to welcome our witnesses tonight. We are thrilled that you can join us. As an individual, we have Dr. Ken Coates, Professor, University of Saskatchewan. Welcome. We have Mr. Jim Basili, co-founder and chair of the Council of Canadian Innovators, and we welcome you. And from Evidence for Democracy, we have Rachel Maxwell, who's the executive director, and Farah Quasar, Director, Research and Policy. We will now go to hearing from our excellent witnesses. You will have 5 minutes. At the 4.5-minute mark, I will hold up a yellow card, so you know there's 30 seconds left to go, and I will make sure that it is fair and even to everyone. And with that, I would ask Dr. Coates to take the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to be with you today. The subject of your talk, the success, challenges, and opportunities of science in contemporary Canada, is one of the most paramount issues of our time. We live in one of the most scientifically intense times in world history. Most of the scientists, when you define scientists in Western terms, who've ever lived are actually alive today. And the number is growing sort of at a very dramatic pace throughout, particularly in China and East Asia, and moving across the rest of the world. We've now come to see science not as something by itself for academic purposes, but we see it as something crucial to economic competitiveness. Governments are investing very, very heavily and shifting their attention away from where it used to be, which is on the science of discovery, toward the whole question of science for the commercial benefit, the benefit of society as a whole. So a tension a little bit between pure science and that of practical, productive, and commercial developments. Canada has struggled to keep up in this enterprise. We try, we're earnest, as we always are in Canada. But like most countries, we've actually followed a very, very simple equation. Why I call it the innovation equation. Put a whole bunch of money into post-secondary education. Canada's world leader in one of those areas. Invest heavily in basic science. We do okay. We're not top of the list. We're not terrible either. And then put a whole bunch of money into the commercialization of scientific and technological discoveries. We do well on the inputs. We put money in incubators and things of that sort. We don't do all that well on the outputs in terms of creating great economic activity. So we have a situation in Canada where our scientists actually are doing very well. We have a high, better than expected return. Economically, not so great. We've got some real bright lights, Kitchener-Waterloo, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver. Watch what's happening in Prince Edward Island, Sherbrooke, Saskatoon, Kelowna, and Victoria. But innovation, not just in Canada, but around the world, has become more imitative than innovative. In fact, innovation is no longer an innovative element within our society as a whole. I suggest that Canada has to consider a series of specific changes. We don't have a plan for what Canada looks like when it's a technologically enabled nation. What is the vision for a science-based country? We need to give our scientists and our technologists and our companies something very much to build toward. We need to recognize the uneven access to the benefits of science and technology, high quality education, not uniform across the country, access to the internet, not uniform, the availability of practical high technologies. What we're actually seeing is the strengthening of what I call city states in Canada, a widening gap between rural areas and small towns, and the further marginalization of Indigenous people and the urban poor. I think we also have to make much better use of government as agents for change, using the government and their spending power as a positive agent for change. We watch this happening in Israel. We see it happening in Estonia, in Taiwan, in India, not as much in Canada, which is unfortunate. We also have to improve greatly our speed of decision making. Decision making has to actually match the speed of innovation and the speed of global business. Our current processes are cumbersome, slow, and only very predictable. We're not very much of a risk taker. I think we need to put a lot more emphasis on unique Canadian challenges, looking at providing healthcare in remote communities, dealing with the national housing crisis, both urban and rural and remote, rebuilding wildlife and fish stocks, improving our resource extraction. We should solve Canadian problems first and export technologies to the rest of the world. We need to find a better balance between pure science and practical technological change. I would encourage you, your committee, I'm sure you're going to talk to these folks, to look at the polytech sector, which does a really good job of taking the bench science and actually applying it in practical ways. And I would encourage you as well to make sure this country invests in scientific literacy. One of our basic problems is a huge gap between our politicians and the civil servants and the scientists and even the innovators who are working on the commercial side. They don't talk to each other particularly well because the literacy is not as strong as we want it to be. So you have a very, very formidable challenge in front of you. Canada must be a country where the science and technology serves the legitimate and pressing needs of our country as a whole. Money is part of the issue, but quite frankly, I think Canada needs to put more emphasis on direction and commitment and collective understanding. We have to know how scientific discovery can make us a better nation. We have to make us a wealthier nation and a stronger country. I think you've got a formidable task in front of you. I wish you all the very best in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Dr. Coates, thank you.
I wonder if the audio could be raised a little bit. It's a little quiet with noise, or else it's my ears. But I hope it's the audio because we can do something about that maybe.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinnon. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. A reminder that the earpieces we can adjust, but we've also are adjusting in the room. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, Mr. Coates. You've given us a lot to think of. And with that, we will go to Mr. Basili for 5 minutes, please.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present to your committee. I'm Jim Balsley, presenting on behalf of the Council of Canadian Innovators. As the committee is currently studying the successes, challenges, and opportunities for science and research in Canada, it's important to evaluate both the inputs and outputs of this ecosystem for Canada. Canada has spent tens of billions of dollars of public funds to build capacity in science and technology. These investments have propelled our universities to the top of global rankings for academic publications and in education of highly sought after graduates. Where Canada fails is in the commercialization of its ideas. We invest in science and research and developing ideas that have significant commercial potential, and then we either squander or give them away. Simply put, Canada is missing critical capacity to turn its valuable ideas towards meaningfully advancing our prosperity and security. 40 years ago, the traditional production-based economy began transitioning to a knowledge-based economy, and more recently, to a data-driven economy. A world previously based on open shared science, on liberalizing trade through tariff reductions, and a patent system designed to reward genuine innovation has transitioned to a world of closed science, closed markets, and monopolization of knowledge and information. In recognition of the growing importance of IP, the United States passed the Bayh-Dole Act in 1980, a sweeping legislation that addresses the ownership of inventions that arise from publicly funded research. Canada continued to ignore the importance of generating IP, and by 2016, even as the global share of the capital stock composed of intangible assets rose dramatically, the share of intangible assets in Canada's economy actually declined. Repeated initiatives aimed at promoting economic growth either had no strategy for generating and commercializing IP, or were designed to transfer decades worth of publicly funded IP to foreign firms. Today, 40 years after the advent of the knowledge-based economy, Canada's deficit in IP payments and receipts is widening at an alarming rate, a position we share with developing countries. These outcomes have consequences for our prosperity, security, and sovereignty, as indicated in a recent internal briefing to the Prime Minister. The OECD recently projected that Canada's economy will be, and I quote, the worst performing advanced economy over 2020 to 2030 and the 3 decades after, affecting Canada's ability to pay for the goods and services we value. To stop these naive and damaging outcomes, I propose 3 recommendations. Re-establish the Economic Council because Canada needs the institutional capacity for the contemporary knowledge-based and data-driven economy. 2, create provisions for research agreements in line with what our Five Eyes partners have done and properly delineate strategic technologies requiring oversight and regulation that are developed out of publicly funded research. And 3, invest in IP collectives which can provide professional, centralized resources for the science and research community. In conclusion, despite a highly educated population and public investments in R&D, Canada has consistently been a large net importer of IP. Canada's history of research and education excellence deserves better outcomes on commercialization opportunities where they exist. The path forward is not spending more or less money on R&D. Rather, it's about building the missing policy capacity for the contemporary economy, including how knowledge is generated, monopolized, and commercialized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bosley. We're grateful for all of you joining us today, and I thank you again. Now we will go to Evidence for Democracy. I'm not sure if it is Ms. Maxwell or Ms. Quasar who is speaking, but it's for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of this new standing committee for the opportunity to be here. My name is Rachel Maxwell, and I'm the Executive Director at Evidence for Democracy. I'm joined today by my colleague, Farah Quasar. Evidence for Democracy is a national, nonpartisan nonprofit that works to close the gap between decision makers like you and the best available science and evidence. We achieve this through original research, skills training, and issues-based campaigns. And we do this because we believe that we all benefit when governments make decisions informed by the best available science and evidence. Our origin story reminds us that Canadians care about the importance of well-founded evidence in public policy. In 2012, thousands of Canadian scientists and their supporters, concerned about the diminishing role of science in government, organized the nationwide Death of Evidence rallies. Their message was clear: we need evidence-informed policy for a strong democracy. With this momentum, the organizers of the event went on to form Evidence for Democracy. In the decade since, much has changed. Canada brought back a chief science advisor in 2017, whose office has championed a network of departmental science advisors and the rollout of science integrity policies. And since 2015, mandate letters have all stated a commitment to the use of science and evidence-based decision-making. These are commendable steps, but there's more to be done. We support the calls already brought forward to you to make bold investments in science today. Canada must keep up and think bigger, but investing in science is simply a good first step. Last summer, British professor Ruth Morgan remarked that the role of science has traditionally been reserved for enabling developments. Think about getting humans to the moon, how we've transformed medicine, or simply how we've come to understand the workings of our planet. These are all critical developments to improving the quality of life for Canadians and should continue to be pursued with vigor and ambition. But Morgan also noted that science will need to become more than this if we are to make the breakthroughs in the global issues we currently face. And so the opportunity for science I want to emphasize with you today is this: while the returns of our investments in science and research matter greatly to our innovation and economic objectives, we need to ensure that they matter equally to our democracy and inform the decisions being made within it. Because public policy needs science more than ever. Virtually every policy issue that you will face as a parliamentarian can benefit from science. especially as we consider the ever-growing challenges related to climate change, food security, widening social inequality, and so much more. So we must work together to put evidence at the heart of public policy. First, we need to make sure that a voice for science is secure in the federal government, because inevitably every government will need access to science advice in the decades ahead. We encourage this committee to consider efforts to protect and formalize the Office of the Chief Science Advisor. Additional advisory resources, such as a parliamentary science officer or expanding the science and research capacity in the Library of Parliament, could also be considered. And we need to revisit investments in federal government science to make sure government scientists are able to deliver on their work. Beyond the federal level, science advice across this country requires a linked up pan-Canadian approach. Historical examples of science coordination of this kind exist and should be reconsidered in the current context. Secondly, COVID-19 has shone a light on the three-way relationship between science, society, and policy. We need more deliberate opportunities for scientists and policymakers to come together to better serve society. Getting the right evidence starts with asking the right questions. Schemes that allow policymakers and scientists to co-create research questions could return more relevant and timely evidence. Better serving society also demands that we reimagine the skills that scientists and policymakers need and help them acquire these competencies. We've just wrapped up our Science to Policy Accelerator training program. Over 250 researchers expressed interest, making it clear that scientists want to participate in public policy. For researchers, some important skills to contribute to policy include communicating evidence concisely and demonstrating its relevance to policy problems, and engaging with stakeholders to build trust and credibility around scientific evidence. For their part, policymakers may benefit from increasing their understanding of the nature and limitations of scientific evidence, as well as risk and statistical literacy. In closing, I wish to highlight that while science has never been more advanced and our ability to gain value from vast amounts of data are unrivaled, we are buckling under the pressure of threats like climate change, misinformation, and unchecked inequality. Future-proofing our country and economy requires a bolder approach to using science to absorb the shocks of the coming decades. This is true in the way that we invest in science and research today, and equally true in the way that the impact of publicly funded research finds its way back to you and decision makers across the country. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maxwell. We're really grateful to all the witnesses for your time and your expertise, and I know our members are eager to talk with you. So we're going to go into a 6-minute round, and we will begin with Mr. Williams for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. Mr. Balsillie, I'm really interested in all the work you've done on talking about intellectual property and protecting that in Canada. And one stat in 2019, you've identified some of that today. The US, Canada in 2019 generated about $39 billion worth of IP, but the US had 6.6 trillion. So 169 times our intellectual property. So I know you had some recommendations tonight, but what specifically are the US doing that we're not to generate the intellectual property that they're generating in just south of us?
The things that I recommended Canada begin and much more. And the US began doing it 40 years ago. The old expression, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best time is now. We simply have no strategy, no orientation, no capacity to generate and control intangible stock assets. They work on a principle of negative rights or restrictions, which is polar opposite the traditional tangible economy. And we just had no capacity, no orientation. And there's a direct causal relationship. Canada is last place in productivity growth in the last 46 years in the OECD, forecasted for the next 30 years. There is a direct causal relationship to this inattention to generate and control and then commercialize intangible stock assets. And I've done business in 156 countries, and it is in the water table of every aspect of how they manage research, commercialization, education, and so forth in the successful innovation economies. It is epicentral. I chaired a panel on this for Ontario. 3 simple recommendations. They're fairly similar to the recommendations here. We simply didn't change for a changed world.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of what you spoke about before about intellectual property, is it better for our country to be more protective of our IP or more open sourced?
Well, being more protective of IP is kind of like raising rent for the homeless. You can't protect something you don't have. So the issue is those that have a lot come to Canada and say, raise protections so that we pay them more rents. And they create a false myth that higher rents will catalyze more creation of intangible assets in Canada. And that's hokum. So the best thing for Canada is actually lower protections because we're an IP pauper. But unfortunately, we've signed into treaties that have locked these in for decades to come. So we have to play for the train we're within and fundamentally play the game that everyone else is playing. I don't think we have the opportunity to take these down. We've signed in extremely high provisions in USMCA, TPP, the TRIPS provisions, CETA. So this is the realm, whether we like it or not, for decades to come. So all my recommendations are not to change the system because I think we've rocked into it. It's how to play better within the system. And then I reiterate, we should have done this 40 years ago, but let's get going now. Okay.
And in Canada right now, about 80% of our IP is institutionally born. Is that similar in the US or is it all over? Are some of these recommendations going to scatter that?
No. I think it's much more commercial in the US, but they have their companies are trained and sophisticated and have scaled in this game. Unfortunately for Canada, our best IP, even if it's institutionally generated, is claimed by foreign companies. So we don't get the economic benefits because the economic benefits and the security benefits flow with the stroke of a pen or a click of a mouse. They move differently than traditional tangible assets, whether oil or manufacturing. So that's the controlling mechanism. So even if we generate them here, we squander them. And I give lots of linked examples in the documents provide, but I give you loads of them.
Fantastic. Yeah. And after this, if there's anything else written that you could provide, that'd be fantastic.
I will. I have lots to share with you if this is of interest. And this is not about money. And I don't say spend more or less money. This is about getting more for the money that we do spend where appropriate. And I say where appropriate because not all research should be oriented to be commercialized. It's simply where the opportunity exists.
Okay. And in terms of the work you've done with the ICC and across Canada, where do you see Canada having a competitive advantage over our Americans or over the world right now? Are there certain things that you see that we haven't taken advantage of yet?
Oh yeah, we have tremendous. I mean, we invented the fundamental artificial intelligence, and then we gave it away to foreign firms. We have fundamental telecommunications technology, and we give it to Huawei. Canada is great at ideas, and we have great indigenous industries that we could apply those to be value added to raise our productivity. Yeah, I think Ken said it, we need some strategies, and strategy begins, there's institutional arrangements, there's policy arrangements, and there's capacity building. Those are my three core recommendations, but we're full of opportunities to do better. Mine is an optimistic story. I think we can raise our GDP per capita.
Okay, thank you. And I have 17 seconds left. Mr. Coates, Dr. Coates, I don't have much time. Maybe you can write this for me or just include it with another answer. I'm really interested in how we're developing rural innovation, not just urban innovation. I know I don't have any time, Madam Chair, but I know you mentioned Charlottetown. I'd like to hear more. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, I always appreciate how to the point you are, but perhaps, as you say, we could hear from someone else, and maybe you can get those answers, or if you want to have that tabled. Thank you for your important questions. And now we will go to Ms. Bradford for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to thank all of our witnesses today for being with us. And so, first of all, I'm hung up in my mask here. But anyway, Mr. Balsillie, I'm recently elected representing Kitchener South Hespeler. So I'm very, very interested, of course, in your perspective. You have a very unique perspective with the Council of Canadian Innovators. And of course, with the BlackBerry history, which I would argue still today is probably one of Canada's most iconic tech startups, which brought us mobile, email, and many of us can't even remember what life was like before that. So anyway, now we do know that the success of the Waterloo region is largely attributed to the fact of the IP policy with University of Waterloo, where the developer of the IP gets to keep the IP and commercialize it, which is quite unique among many universities where the university institution owns the IP. And this has resulted in us attracting professors and students that find that very attractive. I was interested in your comment about IP collectives. Could you explain how they might work?
Yeah, and first of all, I'm not aware of a situation where Waterloo's IP policy has really materially contributed to Waterloo's success. I'm not aware of a company that's been a successful spinoff from Waterloo of any scale in the last 20 years that's a professor-based research. Of course, you have tremendous students who begin to do this, and the returns from Waterloo's commercialization have been minuscule, between $50,000 and $500,000 a year gross, with 6.5 FTEs and hundreds of millions of dollars of research. So I would be interested in a case where Waterloo's IP policy has contributed to the Waterloo region's success, because I'm not aware of any in the last couple decades. IP collectives are very common around the world. There's a pilot at ICID right now, and it's headquartered in the Waterloo region for clean tech and data-driven technologies. And that's fundamentally, I mean, Canada was built on collectives, whether it was credit unions for financing communities, or mutual companies for insurance, or grain co-ops, or equipment co-ops, or batteries, or you can go on and on. Canada was built through coordinated strategies, and it's simply that playbook. They're very, very common around the world. Japan has multiple ones, France, South Korea, Germany, Singapore. So yeah, they're just an organized structure that retains it and gives it stewardship rather than fragmenting. As a small example, the Fraunhofer Institute, with 72 research institutes in Germany and 29,000 researchers, has one centralized agency. Ontario, where I chaired a panel on this, depending on how you define it, has between 2 and 3 dozen, and is a fraction of the size of the Fraunhofer. So it's a 2 orders of magnitude of fragmentation of structural organization. And that's why I say it's not about, it's really about the organization, and it's an organization structural principle, to summarize it up. But there's tons of examples around the world. Ontario started on IP Ontario as a recommendation of our panel. Ottawa has a pilot. Scale it, it's pennies, and it just helps those that, quite frankly, need the help. It's a market failure, it's a capacity failure. And this is small dollars, if not $0. And this is not a criticism of the universities. You've asked them to do a job which is not their normal job and normal skill, any more than you don't want me to be your chef, because I'm not skilled at it, but I have other skills.
Okay, so thank you for that. I'd like to transition now to the area of talent attraction and talent retention. Canada has a great workforce shortage across all sectors of our economy. So I was wondering if you could go into some detail on how we can attract more top talent to Canada. We're a great country to live in, but what do you and the Council of Canadian Innovators see as a way to compete with the likes of the US and UK? We have a lot of our grads maybe go down to the Valley, for example, in the area of tech. So how can we combat this? What would you suggest?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is that you convene a panel with this specific question, because the rules on talent management used to be relatively reduced to convention, but everything's thrown up in the air now with the COVID and remote work and all of that. So I think there's a tremendous number of things Canada can do. Because people can live where they want and then work where they need, and work and live in the same place, quality of life has become central, and then all the infrastructure to do that. So I think our focus on bringing foreign branch plants is not relevant anymore, because the greatest competition for Waterloo companies, as an example, is actually working for Silicon Valley from Waterloo. So I think you have to get your arms around it. I think you have to have definite strategies, fast track immigration, supporting good researchers, having appropriate infrastructure for them, broadband and quality housing and all of these things, and appropriate work laws. So it's a new realm, and there's a lot we can do. But when you begin with a sophisticated country with a great quality of life, Canada should be a magnet for talent.
I agree. I think COVID especially has made it a global talent pool, and I'm concerned that, it's very difficult for us to compete with low-wage places of the world where their standard of living is not what we would want in Canada. So that's going to be an ongoing problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bradford. It's really interesting discussion tonight. Thank you. And now we will go maintenant. Je vous passe la parole.
And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Blanchette-Jonca for 6 minutes. Thank you, and I wish to acknowledge the witnesses who are with us this evening. I'm going to begin my first questions with Ms. Maxwell, for Evidence for Democracy. I saw the report from your organization last November following up on progress in each of the 35 recommendations in the Miller report, including 5 coming up this April. You came to the conclusion that only 9 of the 35 recommendations have been carried through by the Liberal government over the past 5 years. In particular, one of those recommendations from the Nail report was to set up a coordination committee on research in Canada, but after a call for candidates or nominations in 2009, no further progress was made. And Ms. Maxwell, I would also like to mention that in that regard, I questioned the head Ms. Nemers, the head scientific research advisor, and I didn't get any follow-up. And last February, I questioned the Assistant Deputy Minister, Mr. Ben-Baz, in the sector of science and research, who was to come back with an answer, and unfortunately, a month later, still no answer. So we're trying to check with the departments to see what's happening for that call for candidates or applications. So why is there this absence of progress from the NIL reports, and how does this undermine competitiveness and productivity of Canada's scientific ecosystem?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I am going to pass this over to my colleague Farah Quasar, who actually led our Evidence for Democracy's work on our review that you mentioned on the fundamental science report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question, and thank you, Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca, for the question. So the recommendation that you're talking about is for NASTRI, the National Advisory Committee on Research and Innovation. You're correct that there haven't been any updates since. When we were carrying out this research to look into progress since, we found that there have been no public details about this committee. There was a call for applications in 2019, but there hasn't been an update since. There was a secretariat. There were 2 employees who were listed as within the Council of Science and Innovation Secretariat, but I can't find this information anymore. What I will say is that this body was intended to act to provide broad oversight of federal research and innovation. It was meant to include both scientists as well as innovation leaders from both business and civil society. So it was going to act as a convening body to really connect research and innovation. In terms of an update from someone within the federal government, I will point you towards a recent news article. It was published in the University Affairs on 2nd March 2022 by reporter Brian Owens. And there was a quote in there from a spokesperson from the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, where they noted that the government continues to work towards implementing the council, but they didn't offer any specific details or timelines. So I share your frustration. I unfortunately do not have additional insights to note, but I will just say that we're eagerly awaiting details on this too, and this body could help connect both research and innovation in Canada's science ecosystem.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. From a constructive point of view, I took the report. We have 35 recommendations. 9 of them have been resolved, 13 underway, and 13 not resolved. So 9 out of 35 completed. That's about 25%, 25.6 rounding off. So 1 out of 4 was not implemented. I'd like to see from your analysis, what are the recommendations that ought to be put on the government's agenda? What recommendations are truly urgent?
Absolutely. So I do want to note that 9 recommendations are complete, but there are 13 in progress. So technically 22 out of 35 recommendations have seen some progress, and that is a notable win. but you are correct in saying that there are 13 recommendations that are still unresolved. These include NASTRI, or the Council of Science and Innovation Body, as you've referred to. Other unresolved recommendations include the call to implement a First Ministers Conference on Research Excellence, so really bringing together both provincial and federal actors when it comes to talking about and investing in science and research. Another unresolved recommendation is to harmonize legislation across the federal funding agencies, as well as to review the current allocation of funding across the federal funding agencies. I will note that these remain unresolved, but I do want to point out that there are a few caveats to consider when it comes to looking at the Fundamental Science Review. So this review was published in 2017. It's been almost 5 years. There have been 2 mandates and 2 governments since, and we've also been living through the COVID-19 pandemic. So the science landscape in Canada has changed, as well as the global science landscape. I do also want to note that while the Fundamental Science Review had a large and broad scope, it wasn't inclusive of all the different inputs in Canada's science ecosystem. So it didn't include government science, and it didn't include applied science. So it's not a very complete report, but what I do want to note in my last 30 seconds here is that whether we use the Fundamental Science Review as a guide or not, it is urgent that we continue to invest in Canada's science and research ecosystem, because the challenges that we're facing, climate change, future pandemics, they're not going away. And it's the cost of not having the right evidence on hand is going to be far greater in the long run than the immediate costs of investing in science and research today. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet-Jonca.
Go to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think I will stick with evidence for democracy for now. I know I was going to ask about the NAILA report card that you presented, but Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca just did that. You also just put out a report on transparency in government research and policy called Eyes on Evidence, I think it was in January. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to expand on that. I'll ask you a specific question about how transparency can or should be built into government legislation and policy. I was peripherally involved in drafting the species at risk legislation, where it was really built on a model of transparency. That there was the scientific evidence presented by the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada was presented to the government, and the government made a policy decision. But the evidence on all that chain was clear and public. And I'm just wondering if that's a model that is used in other pieces of legislation or policy, or should be. And perhaps you could just give me a sense of where we are in Canada with using evidence in policymaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question, and Mr. Cannings. So I'm going to speak for a few seconds here and then pass it over to my colleague who led the Eyes on Evidence work specifically. So, I mentioned off the top that since 2015, mandate letters have all stated a commitment to the use of science and evidence-based decision making. So we really appreciate these repeated signals. But what really spurred our interest in transparency is that, from our position, we think that if the public is to assess what progress is actually being made in this endeavor in evidence-informed decision-making, they must be given the opportunity to scrutinize the relationship between evidence and policy decisions that are impacting their lives. So this gives citizens, that kind of transparency gives citizens the chance to consider whether they agree with how evidence is being used to formulate public policy. And so, this is why transparency is really mission critical here to evidence-based or evidence-informed policy. So from this position, we undertook the study Eyes on Evidence to examine transparency specifically in the federal government, and put simply, can the evidence behind policy decisions be found by the lay public, or can someone from outside government understand what the government is proposing to do and why? But I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Farah, who actually led this work, and she can provide more specifics.
So in doing this work, we, as Rachel mentioned, we asked the question, can the public find the evidence behind policy decisions? We used a transparency framework that was developed in the United Kingdom by Sense About Science. It includes different categories such as asking, what information do we know about the issue itself? How and when will we know if the policy has worked? And why was a specific intervention chosen? Can we find the evidence behind these questions? So what we ended up doing was we collected a total of 100 random federal policies from 10 different federal departments and agencies. All of these policies were announced between January 2021 to June 2021. We applied the transparency framework and we gave them scores between 0 to 3. So in each case, can we find the evidence behind the issue at hand, the intervention that was proposed, or when we would know if the policy has worked? What we found, sadly, was that overall, the transparency of evidence usage across federal policies scored very low. So it scored either zeros or ones. It means that it's actually very difficult for members of the public to find evidence behind policies. They're left sort of questioning, okay, if this policy announcement was made, how will we know when the result of this policy will be shown? How will we know why this was made? For example, why was a ban proposed rather than a tax refund or a rebate or eviction notice or something like that? We found that there were different transparency scores across different federal departments and agencies. In general, we were kind of left wanting. For example, we saw things such as, yes, there was evidence mentioned, but there was no source or reference provided. Or we noticed that there were pieces of evidence perhaps on different parts of websites, but they weren't included in the policy announcement in the first place. So in short, we found that it's very difficult for members of the public to find evidence, but we do see promising signals. In conversations that we've had with federal departments and agencies, we've seen that folks are surprised by the findings. They didn't realize how big of an issue it was, and they are thinking about how they can make these pieces of evidence more accessible for the public.
Okay, thank you. And I just have probably a short amount of time left, but I just want to ask both Evidence for Democracy and Dr. Coates about this science literacy among decision makers. So perhaps I'll just ask Dr. Coates that to expand on his comments, because I've got the yellow card.
I'll be very quick. Thank you very much for the question, sir. There's actually lots of documentation on the problems of scientific literacy. We have civil servants gathering together with 6 or 7 people who are asked to make multi-billion-dollar investments in very, very complicated scientific situations. And it's a really big problem in Western democracies. You often don't have, no disrespect to the politicians at all. These are really complicated issues. You got to make big decisions about these kinds of things. And we don't systematically go about making sure that the politicians and the civil servants have the necessary background. It's kind of ironic because I also have a problem where we then defaulted onto expert committees who tend to be self-referential and very, very averse to risk. They tend to support the work they're already doing.
Dr. Coates, I'm sorry to interrupt. You were just getting started. My apologies. Dear colleagues, we're now going to go to the second round. This is for 5 minutes, and we'll begin with Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I'd like to carry on some questioning with Madame Maxwell. You talked about how this government has lots of signals and a lot of nice words, but unfortunately there isn't a lot of action that follows up the nice words. And I think of one of the most negatively impactful policies in this country's maybe history is around the vaccine mandates. And to be clear, I'm a pro-vaccine, anti-mandate parliamentarian, where I believe that policy was not based in science. So I'd be interested to hear your comment on how you would investigate or give a report on was science used to enact the mandates that were done during the election last year. So how would you develop a framework that would actually look at if science was actually used at all?
Okay. That's, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Not quite sure where to start with that one. I mean, I think in a sense, you've sort of made the case for our transparency framework. You know, if there, you know, as my colleague mentioned, unfortunately, we didn't find that there was a strong demonstration often in the relationship between the evidence and information being used and the policy decision. So, you know, in a sense, I think, you know, the starting point is simply, you know, would be our transparency framework. We would, you know, we could apply that framework. You can apply that framework. The framework itself is intended to be, it does not require subject matter expertise. So anyone can use it. You know, you yourself could use it and assess the policy announcements and related documents to see how well do the policies associated with vaccine mandates score on the transparency framework. I don't know if my colleague wants to add any additional information.
I will just add the caveat that just because we can't see the evidence from the sidelines doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There may be confidentiality reasons, it may be crisis time circumstances. So that is just one caveat to keep in mind, that just because we can't see the evidence from the sidelines doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But that's sort of the case to point out that, you know, perhaps evidence should be available as a default, and only in crisis times that evidence may remain private for a while.
Madam, well, on the Evidence for Democracy, I noticed that you used to run Can Scientists Speak on whether government scientists felt muzzled. But I see that report in 2015, but I haven't seen it updated. And it's a little puzzling. In 2018, we had the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada reported that over half of government scientists felt muzzled in the Trudeau government. And I'm just interested to know if you haven't done that report again, if there's a reason, or if it's to be coming out here shortly.
Thank you for the question. So yes, that work was done by our predecessors at Evidence for Democracy. You know, we stand by that work. It was important work, particularly at that time. You know, since that time, there has been a huge effort around science, rolling out science integrity policies across federal departments and agencies, which in part has addressed this issue around can scientists speak freely. And if I understand correctly from the Office of the Chief Science Advisor, they are working on sort of the Science Integrity Policy 2.0. So hopefully furthering, you know, federal scientists' ability to speak freely and speak openly about their work. In terms of, you know, the current sentiments on within the federal public service, I don't believe that. You know, from our position at Evidence for Democracy, we have the information at hand to provide you with an informed response, but we certainly encourage you to get in touch with the Professional Institute of the Public Service on that question.
And there's more than that. That was in 2018. I would encourage you to restudy the subject matter again to look at the actual effects. Once again, you said there's plans in place, but did that actually result in better transparency? And even as last year, the Medical Association Journal expressed concerns about the science around COVID. And I would say that there's probably a benefit for a look over to see if things are actually improved or not. I believe our time is almost up here, so I'd like to once again thank the witnesses for taking part today.
Thanks, Mr. Tucker. And I'll just say something I really appreciate about this committee is the respect and dignity that we show one another. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. And with that, we will go to Mr. Collins for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'd like to start with Mr. Balsillie. Sir, I represent the riding in Hamilton East, Stony Creek, and so I can't let the opportunity pass without saying thank you for the Make It 7 campaign back in the 2000s, and I was a member of council at that point in time, and I know you put a lot of your own personal time, energy, and resources into that. So heartfelt thank you for everything you tried to do for Hamilton. And, you know, Seinfeld has Newman as his foil, and Hamilton has Bettman, so no need to comment on that, but thank you for everything you did, sir. I wanted to ask you about when I went to the Council of Canadian Innovators website. It's very clear on the front page there where you talk about access to capital. And I heard your constructive criticism that you provided to a couple of the other questions that were asked of you. Specifically, investments maybe into institutions and what that has yielded in terms of innovation and what's come of it. And I know that successive provincial governments of different political stripes have made big investments into, your area where you came from in Kitchener-Waterloo, and certainly in Hamilton, McMaster Innovation Park is doing tremendous work currently on the vaccine and as well as autonomous vehicles, amongst a couple of projects. And so it sounded like your comments, and I just want to be clear, were that we're making investments in innovation, but maybe not in the right areas. Can you clarify that in terms of the comments you made earlier? Because on your website it says that we believe that government investments in innovation should be directed towards high growth firms. And so I'm just trying to rationalize that statement with your other statements and looking for some guidance in terms of where weighted investments should go with institutions and or other organizations that are into innovation.
Sure. And thank you for your question and your kind comments. Fundamentally, maybe I'll go to the panel I chaired for the province of Ontario. And when we gave our recommendation, the response was, we only had 3 recommendations. And they said, sometimes the most vexatiously complex problems have the simplest of solutions. Number 1, we don't teach it, we don't govern for it, and we don't provide services for it. And all the rest of the world does. So it's not whether we spend more or less, it's whether we develop the capacity to keep owning what we come up with. Because owning ideas works on a fundamentally opposite principle of the tangible economy. The jacket you are wearing, you physically own that. That's called a positive right. But the design of that jacket is a negative right. I can stop you from making that if I own the design. But it's very hard to do without proper training, without proper governance, and without proper services. So I'm not saying spend more money or less money. I'm simply saying have the capacity and the institutions and the accountability structures that says you have to treat this responsibly. And if you dig just a little bit deeper, you will be very, very disappointed how we've treated this national security and prosperity asset over the past 40 years. And then the good news, that's a very sad story, but the good news story is it can be fixed very quickly with effectively no money.
Okay, thank you for that. On access to talent, you talked about competing with the U.S., and you gave some statistics there in that regard in response to another question. And I think right on, again, on the cover page of the Council of Canadian Innovators, it says, we believe high-skilled talent is the jet fuel Canadian companies need to reach new heights. And so you talked about immigration and some other issues that we can do to improve upon that. Can you expand upon your previous answer in that regard in terms of whether it's retaining the talent that we currently have that are coming through the McMasters of the world or other universities and institutions? And then how do we compete in terms of attracting people from other parts of the world to come to Canada and provide us with that expertise?
Yeah, I think you need to have deliberate strategies. And I think we've had strategies as a nation to bring the branch plant here, not really to keep the talent here, the high-end talent, and to keep all the positive tax effects and management effects and wealth effects and security effects. So all roads go to a magnet for talent and for growing domestic companies. And once you see that that's where this, so it's basically, it requires spillover analysis, but you can't do spillover analysis if you don't have capacity. And that's why I recommend the Economic Council for the Analytical Capacity, which Canada canceled and stripped out of its civil service in '92.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Collins. It's a good discussion tonight. And now we will go to the 2.5-minute round. And we will start with Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca.
Thank you, Chair. My question will be for Mr. Balsillie. Mr. Balsillie, according to the OECD, the amount of investment in research and development in the private sector in Canada represented only 0.81% of the GDP in 2019, whereas the average for OECD members was 1.76% of GDP. Canada stood in 24th rank among OECD countries, according to that indicator. Could you please explain to us what accounts for this low level of investment of the private sector in research and development in Canada?
I'm happy to do that. And in this policy area, Canada's policy community has peddled false myths that there's a complacency or lack of competitive intensity or weak receptors for the business community. And you have to understand that research by government leads to research by business in the traditional production economy. But when you go into the intangibles economy, research for government must then translate into what's called freedom to operate or owned intellectual property, which naturally then drives corporate investments. So we miss the middle step in the changed economy. So for instance, if I said, well, gee, I want to make the next Google, here's $5 billion and go build a data center. Of course, that's not going to work. But if you wanted to be a brick manufacturer 100 years ago, it would work because you don't own the ideas. So the reason we lose the translation from GERD to BIRD is we miss the institutional middle piece of freedom to operate. And that's the foundational flaw of our public policy. And if we had expertise in the civil service through the new economic council, a proper analytical framework that would snap forward that issue right away. And that's precisely what the provinces are doing to address this and the ICID pilot. So let's see what the real issue is and focus on it.
Monsieur Balsillie, rapidement, quels sont les
Briefly, Ms. Balsillie, what are obstacles for businesses that want to invest?
Well, the problem is there's no idea to invest into because the idea is gone. There's nothing to invest. So the government money went to foreign firms, or it just squandered because there was no institution that developed it over 5 years. So there's nothing to invest.
Thank you so much, Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca. And if we could, we have 2.5 minutes, and we'll go to Mr. Cannings, please.
Well, thank you. And I will go back to Evidence for Democracy and let them respond to my question about scientific literacy in decision makers. And I guess specifically, you mentioned in passing the idea of having a parliamentary science officer that would be available to MPs, senators, whoever who needed scientific advice or who could present ideas to them and say, what is the science behind this? You know, the chief science advisor works for the government, works for cabinet, basically. Should we have some office that could provide that service for parliamentarians generally?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so we did make this suggestion for a parliamentary science officer for pretty much the exact reason that you just outlined, that the parliamentary science officer could be there to directly serve parliamentarians and really provide more scientific expertise in the House of Commons itself. And so there are models of this in other countries. The UK has a Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology, and the White House has an Office of Science and Technology. And it's could be similar to the Parliamentary Budget Officer already in place. So specifically, a parliamentary science officer can give a stronger voice in Parliament and could have responsibilities like assessing the state of scientific evidence relevant to any proposals or bills before Parliament, answer requests from committees and individual MPs for scientific information or expertise, and even conduct independent analysis of federal science and technology policy.
Well, thank you. And I'll just, I think, leave it there, but I just wanted to hear your views on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cannings. I'd like to thank all our witnesses tonight. You've provided a lot of information for us, which I know the committee really appreciates. We're grateful for your time and your expertise, and we'll say thank you. And to our colleagues here, I know all of us would like to recognize the wonderful people who support this committee, and we say thank you. And with that, we have a new analyst joining us tonight, Monsieur Grégoire Gaillard. So welcome and thank you, everyone, and we'll break for a few minutes. Thank you. Order. I'd like to welcome all our witnesses tonight. You have a really lovely committee here who's really interested in what you have to say. We're thrilled that you are joining us. We can't wait to hear your testimony. Tonight we have Dr. Alan Winter, who's the former British Columbia Innovation Commissioner. Welcome, Dr. Winter. We have Dr. Jeremy Kerr, who's a professor of biology, Faculty of Science, University Research Chair at the University of Ottawa. Welcome, Dr. Kerr. And from the Colleges and Institutes Canada, we have Denise Amiot, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer, and we've heard has just won this wonderful award. And we have Don Lavisa, who's President from Durham College. Welcome, everyone. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. At the 4.5-minute mark, I will hold a yellow card, so you know that you have 30 seconds, and we'll keep it even and fair across the board. So with that, we will start with Dr. Winter for 5 minutes, please.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Alan Winter, and I'm pleased to be invited to appear before the committee. This work is very important to Canada's future, and I hope to explain why I think so. Although I was recently BC's Innovation Commissioner, I'm appearing as an individual today, so I'll introduce myself because it'll give a context to my comments. I came to Canada for my PhD at Queen's University because of Canada's reputation as the third nation in space, and because the space program was driven by a mission to provide Canada with communications, remote sensing, and economic opportunities throughout the country, particularly in the north. The space program is fueled by excellent Canadian science, with government, industry, and academia in a strong partnership to overcome challenges and to benefit the country. After my PhD, I worked as a government scientist at the Communications Research Centre on satellite programs and led a successful international project called SRSR. Canadian companies developed the key equipment and now used internationally. Entering the commercial world, I became Director of Engineering for Telesat Canada at a time we launched 6 new spacecraft and extended satellite links as far north as Eureka on Ellesmere Island. We moved out west and I became CEO of several telecom and tech companies, including MPR Teltech, I think at that time the largest tech company west of Ontario. We had strong research links with the universities and spun out 6 companies during the time I was CEO. And also for 2 years, I was president of the space division of ComDev in the Waterloo region. When I left the corporate world and returned to Vancouver, I got involved with the Human Genome Project and Genome BC in 2001. And during the 15 years I was CEO of Genome BC, we were able to raise over $700 million for BC through partnerships with the federal government, the provincial government, and industry to invest in the science of genomics for the bioeconomy and health. And I think, Madam Chair, when you were minister, you visited us there, which is now paying off for life science sector in Canada, particularly during this pandemic. From 2018 to 2020, I was BC's first Innovation Commissioner, advising the government on research and innovation and helping to attract investment into BC. 2 of my reports were made public, and I've referenced them for the committee below. In my view, so from that experience, we've had some spectacular successes in science in Canada, and I'm sure the witnesses will be able to tell you that in each of the meetings. Successive federal governments must be commended for continuing to invest in science at a significant level. However, as many have said, the world has changed, and we need a science framework or policy in Canada that encourages science to be a significant driver of the knowledge-based economy and to meet the challenges we faced. And I think there's been some discussion in the first hour around that. In this way, we would encourage the demand side of science as well as the supply side. That science framework, in my view, would also, number one, recognize that now more than ever, we need to rejuvenate government science to help with the complex regulations and standards in our society and trade negotiations in an increasingly protectionist and particularly recently geopolitically unstable world. Number two, we need to encourage big science in selected areas, carefully selected areas, and fund the basic operations 100%. That the match funding of big science just doesn't make sense. The third item is we need to learn from the pandemic to apply our science to preventative measures and to develop secure and essential supply chains within the country, not only in health. And we learned that in a big way during the pandemic. And number four, develop a science foresight system with the Council of Canadian Academies and others to identify emerging science that builds on strength and enables Canadian competitiveness. We have at least three solitudes in Canada. We have government, we have industry, and academia. We have a long way to go to connect the excellent science we do to the rest of the innovation system, to the challenges we face as a country, and therefore to security and prosperity. It's time to get serious. There is no reason that we cannot harness the intensity we brought to the space program to address such challenges as climate change, our health system, our defense, our oceans, sustainability, and increasingly global economy and others. Canada has long enjoyed abundant natural resources, attractive geography, and favorable access to North American markets. However, despite excellent science, we have traded raw commodities to buy technology. This has led to competitive complacency, particularly over the last 20 years or so, has left the country behind in innovation, productivity, and particularly in business development and research and development. We need to reclaim our economic sovereignty as a country, and I look forward to seeing this committee's recommendations on how our excellent science can help lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Winter. We're delighted you can join us tonight. And now we will go to Dr. Kerr for 5 minutes. Welcome.
I'm so grateful to join you this evening. I greet each of you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and I acknowledge their stewardship with gratitude. I'm a professor of biology at University of Ottawa, an ecology researcher, a research chairholder and past president of a scientific society, and an executive member of NSERC Council. I've long been involved in working on science to inform policy and on policy for sustaining science. Most importantly, I'm a parent who cares about the world my children will inherit. And like each of you, I wear many hats. And like everyone here this evening, I'm doing my best to make a difference for others. It's a long road to become a scientist. Completing an undergraduate degree in any scientific discipline is frankly tough. That degree often culminates in a research project that provides a taste of what discovery requires. It's easy to doubt yourself through those difficult years. Will I discover anything? Do I have what it takes? And what comes next? For a researcher in training, what comes next is graduate school. For many, that means a doctorate. The best bridge between an undergraduate and graduate degree is a scholarship from a federal granting council. Such scholarships help enormously but are falling increasingly far below the poverty line, and they are incredibly hard to get. The resulting hyper-competition imposes a filter that excludes many talented people from pursuing their dreams of contributing as a scientist. Hyper-competition is a term I draw from the recent report on discovery research in Canada by the Council of Canadian Academies. It simply means that the competition is so fierce that excellent people are excluded arbitrarily. Hyper-competition filters excellence out of our system. A student completing her doctorate is usually in her late 20s, a long way yet from becoming an independent scientist. There are still years to go as a postdoctoral researcher, requiring more hyper-competitive applications for fellowships. And by the time this scientist completes her postdoc, she's probably in her 30s at least. If she finds a position as a researcher, she'll need to obtain more funding. 60% of those funds go directly to student support. And to sustain her career, she's going to need to publish her and her team's discoveries frequently in good quality research journals, which impose steep fees for that privilege. There are so many gateways to pass before becoming a scientist. Each of us experiences these gateways, these filters differently. I am not called by hateful racial epithets on the bus, but some of my students have experienced just that. When I attend meetings, I do not have to worry about unwanted physical contact in the hallways, and yet such things and worse can be a fact of life for some in our community. The hard work we are doing towards inclusion must continue in granting councils, in institutions, and in our labs. Yet there are extraordinary moments that make being a scientist the most rewarding career I can imagine. Moments of discovery and learning make those years of training and effort worthwhile. For me, discovering ways that climate change pushes species toward extinction resonated deeply and pointed also to solutions. Leading students through the Serengeti to work on conservation changed my life as well as the lives of those students. Scientists enjoy extraordinary trust from society. That trust is both sacred and provisional, and it needs constant renewal. A great way to do this is through citizen science, which mobilizes communities to participate in data collection. We started building such programs in my lab more than a decade ago, starting on Canadian butterflies. How can people not trust evidence when they have collected it themselves? Canada needs its scientists to remain engaged, speaking passionately and with humility about the awesome mysteries of nature that we study. So in your study of Canada's science and research ecosystem, I hope you'll remember that it is our researchers who make Canadian science extraordinary. Where hypercompetition and bias stifle excellence or filter it out, we are missing opportunities to bring all our talents to bear on the defining challenges and mysteries of our time. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you so much, Professor Kerr. We're grateful that you're here with us tonight. We'll now be going to the Colleges and Institutes of Canada. I'm not sure if it's Ms. Amiot who's speaking, and we will hear from you for 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today, I want to discuss the role our members play in science and research on behalf of our 142 publicly supported colleges, cégeps, institutes, and polytechnics.
With 95% of Canadians and 86% of Indigenous peoples living less than 50 kilometers from a college campus, our members have a very strong immersion in their communities. They are trusted partners in the community and of industry and serve as a gateway locally into the ecosystem of innovation. So our members bring 2 essential contributions to the development of science in Canada. First of all, we prepare students for careers in what are known as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and among STEM, and among our members' programs, some 1,500 are scientific programs, and a certain number of others also include scientific content, of course. These programs fulfill needs of the local economy by providing students with skills and training that prepare them for work.
Colleges are home to a unique form of research, applied research. Applied research is an essential part of Canada's research ecosystem that uses the discovery process to solve problems for partners, often businesses, especially SMEs. And our business-led approach to science and research makes Canada more productive, competitive, and resilient. Our approach is unique in 3 ways. The research question is driven by the partner. Second, the partner retains the intellectual property. And third, we develop solutions quickly, with 85% of projects being completed in under 1 year. Alors,
SMEs find our approach particularly attractive because they account for some 70% of applied research partners. Over the past 10 years, investments in applied research have increased considerably. First of all, revenues have doubled. Secondly, the financing from private sector corresponds dollar for dollar to federal investments. For example, in 2019-20, more than 8,000 businesses received college support, whether it's through technical expertise, equipment, or access to a talented labor force. And more than 42,000 students participated in applied research, and more than 5,500 new processes, products, prototypes, and services were developed.
Now turn to my colleague, Don Loviza, president of Durham College.
Thank you, Denise. Madam Chair, it is a privilege to be here before this committee, representing Durham College, and speaking on the impact of applied research. Our research partners value our collaboration with them because they know we can quickly deliver solutions on their timelines, and they retain the ownership of their IP. One example of a business that we partnered with during the pandemic is Forpay Incorporated, a financial technology firm specializing in digital wallets. Durham College's AI Hub assisted them with building a wallet optimizer to manage gift cards in the company's proprietary digital wallet. Another company, Connix Health Incorporated, is a first-of-a-kind personal support work as service company providing care services for seniors across this country. Durham College's AI Hub assisted the company to build their digital health service to assist users with choosing their services and optimizing timing and delivery. You know, we're always grateful for our primary research funders, NSERC and NRC. Commercialization supports, however, are limited in the current funding environment, and without assistance, companies can struggle with next steps such as regulatory challenges, certifications, finding strong investment partners, sales, marketing, manufacturing, and distribution. The lack of these supports for small and medium-sized companies is a limiting factor in success. There are limited local resources to support growth, and for colleges, we do not receive any resources beyond funding projects. Looking to the future, we are exploring the development of a trades innovation center. They'll be the first of a kind, establishing an exciting new connection between diverse trades to collaborate and develop new industries solutions. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. We look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for appearing at this inaugural committee in its inaugural study. We are grateful for your time, your expertise. We're now going to go, I know our members are eager to talk to you, and we're going to begin with the 6-minute round, and we'll be starting with Ms. Gladue.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here tonight. As a chemical engineer, I started my career in research, doing hollow fiber membrane separations for artificial kidneys and dialysis. So certainly value all of your contributions here tonight. I want to start with Mr. Winter. You know, it seems to me if I look at what's happened over the past number of years, you know, we've eliminated the Ministry of Science, the money, the $4 billion of increased funding that was suggested from the Naylor report didn't appear. And we've put money into superclusters, but not really put the money towards participation in global innovation. And so what would you like to see from the federal government in order to really spur innovation ahead in Canada?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Madam Chair and member. I do believe that the money we're currently spending in these areas of science, technology, research, and development, we need to get a better bang for the buck. And some of that was discussed in the first hour. But beyond that, I think that we have to recognize the fact that we're one of the only OECD countries that has been reducing year by year to some extent our total investment in research and development, science and technology, whether that be from the higher education side, the government side, or business side, particularly on the business side. So our total investment, if you like, is around about 1.6% of GDP. And the OECD average, let alone the higher players, is something like 2.6. So that's a percent difference. That percent difference represents something like $26 billion. So it's not that the government funds that, but the government has to create the environment where that sort of money is spent on higher value products, because only when we have higher value products are we able to have the productivity and the amount of revenue that's coming in at that particular time. So I do think that, first of all, we need to get more bang for the buck in the money that we're spending. But second of all, I think we've got to make sure that we bring together government, academia, and industry into centers of excellence. So in my reports for the BC government, we talked a little bit about some of the recommendations of how to actually do that within a province, and encourage the active participation of not only universities, but the colleges and others, the communities in business and government in centers of excellence that would be able to compete with on the world stage.
Well said, thank you. Now I'll ask a question for Mr. Kerr. You spoke about the competitiveness of students and the hyper competition. It seems like there are a lot of things we've heard so far about how, we're not competitive in the salaries we're paying to the PhDs. They've not been increased in 25 years. And then there's the frustration that if they come and they do research in Canada, there's so many barriers to actually seeing a successful commercial enterprise come forth from the research. Could you comment on what you think we need to do to be competitive on the world stage with respect to students?
Budget 2018, of course, was a historic investment in science and research in Canada, and I think it's really worth noting that that was a major influx of support for investigator-led research, something we hadn't seen before. However, appreciative we should all be of that budget, there were bits that were not in it, and that's not surprising. One of the bits that wasn't in it was the sharp expansion in student support that we might have aspired toward had funding been unlimited in some way. So we would like to see a couple of different things in terms of student support change as funding becomes available to the science and research ecosystem. The first of those is simply the number of awards really does need to increase. And to do that, we need to expand the budgets to the tri-councils to facilitate their support for doctoral master's scholarships as well as the Canada Graduate Scholarship. But we also need to look at the amount of money associated with those scholarships, which, as you correctly point out, has not changed in a long while. I know that many people would like to see that change, and I'm one of them. I think that's another area we can look at. So we need to adjust the success rate so it improves. We need to adjust the funding rate for people who are successful. And then the innovation piece, I think, is probably most clearly associated with the mission that MyTax currently has. And there was a very, very large investment in MyTax last year. If memory serves, somewhere between $700 and $800 million towards fellowships. And I think we need to watch very carefully and hope that that will lead to important advances with innovation for students.
Very good. And now a question, both Ms. Amiot and Don Lovisa, love it that you have visa in your name, can answer. And it has to do with colleges. In my riding, we have Lambton College that's always in the top 3 of research for colleges in Canada, but I know there's lots of excellent work going on. However, it seems that the split of funding for universities and colleges is not where it ought to be. Can you comment on what you think we ought to be doing in terms of that split?
Absolutely. It's a very good question. If I may answer, and then Don could add what it means at the local
Ms.
level.
Samio, a very short answer, like 20 seconds.
Yes. Okay. In fact, the difference is colleges get about 2%, 1.9% of all the amount of dollars in research. So the potential is huge. And what is interesting is how the investment of the private sector towards colleges research has increased, in fact, in the last 2 years. Now it's dollar
Thank
for
you,
dollar.
Ms. Samio. I hate to do this. I've got to be even, Stephen. Thank you. Ms. Gladue, thank you for your important questions. We will now go to Mr. McKinnon for 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank all the witnesses for joining us tonight. Your testimony has been very helpful, and I appreciate it. As a BC Member of Parliament, I want to start with Dr. Winter. I represent the fine riding of Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, so we're almost neighbors. And I appreciated, Doctor, your survey of your history and the broad scope of your experience and what you bring to the table. You made the point in your list of points that one of the things, main thing, point number 1 was we need to rejuvenate government science. Those three words seem to cover a broad territory. I wonder if you could expand on that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think government science is not appreciated really in the country, and for various reasons. Because we've moved most of the science, if you like, out of the government into contracting for it. What's happened as a result of that, I think, is that some of the advantages which we need to have in national negotiations, et cetera. I was involved with, for example, negotiations on spectrum in the satellite world, and we couldn't have been as successful as we have as a country without the government scientists providing the background and interfacing, if you like, with the senior policy people within the government at that time. So in Canada, in terms of government science, we spend about 0.13% of GDP on government science. And the OECD average, again, is about 0.25. So it's about double. And that, not that that's a huge amount necessarily, but it represents something like 2.5 billion per year. And if you thought about that being applied in all the areas where we have challenges, so not just trade, not just telecommunications, but in our areas around health, as we've seen, et cetera, the economy, our international defense, our Arctic programs, et cetera, we need to have people who are in government, who understand the science, can provide good advice, which may be confidential at times. And that's, I think, the direction that I think we should go.
Thank you. So you also mentioned we need to support big science, and we need to support big science 100% in carefully selected areas. So what kind of areas, and how do we carefully select them?
Yeah, and this is why I think quite a few people have recommended various ways to go about this, either from a council perspective, which I think had been intended to be set up. But I do think that part of the issue here is the context. And the context as a country, I think we've got to be able to understand that the complacency doesn't do it. As we look forward, and I think we all agree that we have significant challenges ahead, not just on the economy side, but also in our security, in the fact that the world is becoming more protectionist, et cetera. I think if we look at all those things happening, that we must make sure that we are able to choose areas which have a connection across academia, across industry, across government, and address some of the things that we really need to deal with, such as climate change. So you can take those areas and you can say, if you work your way back, what are the emerging technologies and how do we invest in them? I'm on the board of Oceans Network Canada, which is a great organization, but it spends most of its trying to find match funding for the work that's being done. And it's been much appreciated that the CFI has been able to raise its amount of funding to, I think, 60% of the total, but the other 40% is still there. And I think part of what we need to be able to do is not only choose the areas well, but when we've chosen those, to invest in this basic operations 100%.
Thank you. I have a minute and a half left, so I have a quick question. I believe I'll direct it to Dr. Kerr. It's about open science. So on other committees in the past, we've heard testimony that says the government, public money gets invested in research that is then held in confidence or used in proprietary ways. And the thought was that that research paid for by public funds ought to be open to basically everybody. And I guess I wonder if you think that's a good idea, whether that would be would stifle research or whether that would enhance research. So please go ahead.
Thank you. That's a superb question. There are lots of ways that we can think about this problem, and I think we need to be very cautious at the outset that we don't try to argue that all research is specifically conducted in the public interest or that it is investigator-led research. And what that means is that some kinds of research is really targeted towards industry and innovation. And there can be all kinds of opportunities along that road for that work to take on a proprietary air. And if so, that might be entirely appropriate. In my own field, where what I'm thinking about, for example, is usually science in the public interest in some way or other, science thrives on reproducibility and open testing of ideas that are published. As a consequence, we like to see our work appear and be open for everybody to evaluate, and that means open science is the way we like to go for that work.
Thank you, Professor Kerr, and thank you to Mr. McKinnon for important questions. Maintenant, je vous passe la...
And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Blanchet-Jonca for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. And I wish to acknowledge the witnesses who are with us. And my question is for Ms. Amiot. Ms. Amiot of College and Institute of Canada. It's a pleasure once again to see you this evening and to discuss with you. Thank you for being here, Ms. Amiot. I took note of the recommendations that you filed with the Standing Committee on Finance concerning your pre-budget consultations. And there's one aspect which caught my attention, which is the issue of financing for recommendation number 4, a recommendation that, of course, is one of your pre-budget recommendations. You formulated a recommendation of $40 million a year on a permanent recurring basis to develop applied research capacity of colleges and institutes. Could you tell us more about their recommendation, please? Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So what's happening is during COVID, we received an amount of some $40 million per year for 2 years. Unfortunately, this was only provided for 2 years, and it was specific to small and medium businesses. So what we are saying is that now we ought to have this $40 million on a permanent basis, because we've seen how rapidly it was spent and how many companies were able to receive assistance through it. And we held a meeting with quite a number of our meetings that demonstrate the need for that, because what happens now is that everything is done on a project-by-project basis, and there is a lack of capacity for the follow-up. And my colleague, I don't know if we have time for this, but my colleague Don could give some examples of the shortcomings existing when you have projects that are on an ad hoc basis and that only finance a portion of the project, but not what's upstream or downstream of it. Thank you, Ms. Amiot. In your opening speech, you mentioned that more than 95% of all Canadians live within 50 kilometers of a college. I'd like to hear you about the importance of ensuring the presence, a long-standing presence of these institutions in Quebec and Canada. Well, it's very, very important, because the research that we do is truly to serve the needs of the community and of businesses. And so we know that the greater part of the employers in our country are small and medium businesses. Unfortunately, often they do not have the equipment or the expertise needed to do research in order to solve some of the problems that they face. And this is the case from ocean to ocean to ocean, whether it's in a rural or urban area or in a remote or northern area. So this is what we are offering to all Canadians, is applied research in the service of everyone. In your opinion, Ms. Amiot, what can a cégep or college in a region be different from one in a remote region or a big city? Often a college or cégep in a region is going to be the center of what goes on in the community. Often it represents the places where people do sports. Those are the places where people gather, because it becomes a place for the community, and sometimes it's the biggest employer in that region. So if we talk about having research and productivity And if we talk about providing an economy all across the country, this demonstrates the importance of supporting research throughout all the colleges across the country. Ms. Amiot, according to you, once again, based on your experience, do you believe that the federal government and subsidizing organizations understand and consider these differences? And to pick up on that, do you think the federal government is doing enough to ensure the success of institutions in the regions? Quite frankly, I think one could always do more. This is why we are asking for this $40 million, which is quite reasonable, and we're asking to have it on a permanent basis in order to ensure that all of the colleges across the country, whether it's in urban or rural areas, will be able to benefit from those funds, because ultimately it's also an issue of fairness, and the small and medium businesses, whether in Rimouski or small and medium businesses in Flin Flon, Manitoba, they also need support. Thank you very much. Could you please share with us those obstacles faced by CEGEP's colleges and institutes that do research when they interact with the federal government? Well, often, unfortunately, there are calls for tenders that come up twice a year, and a business doesn't operate twice a year. A business needs ongoing financing on a regular basis. And if the business has a problem in November and they are told, well, listen, the calls for tender, you have to wait for June to solve your problem. That's not how it works. So that's one of the problems. There are others, but I don't have time to go into them. Ms. Amiot, could you please share with us the problems in writing, please? Thank you. It'll be a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Blanchet-Jonca.
Good questions, always so on time. And now we're going to go to Mr. Cannings for 6 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to move to Dr. Kerr. And I was going to ask you, Dr. Kerr, about the scholarship question, because we've heard that from several witnesses already. And I think it's important bit of policy the government really has to address. But Ms. Gladue asked that question for me, so I'll move on to something else. And you mentioned citizen science, and as you may know, that was a big part of my life before I became a politician. I was involved with building citizen science programs to tackle the question around especially bird population trend analysis, harnessing the expertise and enthusiasm of birders across the country. I had about 20,000 people working for me for nothing, people who knew more about birds than scientists, true scientists, I guess. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that, because I think citizen science is such an important part of research in Canada, and it may be the only time it gets mentioned in this study. So I'd really like to hear more about what you feel about citizen science and where it could lead us.
Thank you very much for that question. And I'd like to just say, Madam Chair, that MP Cannings and indeed his entire family are kind of science superheroes for the rest of us, and the contributions they've made are just unbelievable. So it's a real delight to have a chance to chat with you about such things. Citizen science puts the process of data gathering and sometimes even the complexities of data analysis in the hands of members of our communities. So we sometimes also call it participatory science. And this is one of the ways in which we can open the doors of the ivory tower and make sure that the light gets in, but also ideas get into the ivory tower. And that goes in both directions. So we want everybody to be able to have a conversation about issues that are relevant in their local communities, or that they are personally passionate about. And I think we both know that there is no more passionate group of naturalists than birders. So things like the Breeding Birds Survey, the breeding bird atlases that exist have enabled literally tens of thousands of people across more than half a century of time, nearly 60 years now, if memory serves, to monitor and detect that the world is changing in ways that affect people, but also affect nature. Citizen science made that possible. It wasn't us scientists in the ivory tower. However hard we work, we have nothing like the power of our communities to step out into nature and to detect things. And I should say that although my own personal predilections in this topic go very strongly towards looking at biological diversity, there are many applications for citizen science that go far beyond counting birds or counting butterflies. Things like looking at the status of bridges, for example, would make a great citizen science program, or detecting Lyme disease risks. And there's a million things that can be done. Citizen science puts that power in the hands of our communities. And I think that's a really good idea. Mr. Cannings appears to have frozen.
Something that the government should take on. Oh, I'm thawed. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I'm sorry I missed the first part of your question.
Okay,
Mr.
sorry,
Cannings,
wanted...
can you start that again, please, for that new question?
I'll do that. I just wanted to ask Dr. Kerr about whether, a lot of that citizen science work that I did was funded by the federal government. They got, I think, a huge bang for their buck. And I'm just wondering if you would agree that that would be something that could and should be expanded.
I would indeed agree that that's something the government should have a clear hand in, and at times even a directing role, or at least a very strong convening role. This gives a kind of structure to the nature of data collection so that those data can sometimes be applied to problems that are pressing. And that, I think, would be a very good idea. There are initiatives underway, and we want to make sure that those things proceed, things like the Canadian Biodiversity Observation Network, that might be a kind of all-hands-on-deck moment, both for citizen scientists or participatory scientists, as well as the professional science community in both government and in academics. These kinds of things will tell us answers to questions that are extremely pressing as climate changes and habitat loss also proceeds. So I believe the short answer to your question, Mr. Cannings, is yes.
Okay, thank you. And I believe I'm, according to my clock, running out of time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you, Dr. Kerr. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Cannings. And you've all brought new perspectives, some that we haven't heard tonight. And I just say it's really lovely to hear our colleague recognized tonight. So thank you for that. We're now going to go for a 5-minute round. And we're going to begin with Mr. Soroka. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming to this evening. Dr. Winter, I really like how you spoke about we need to have government, industry, and academia working together. But you also spoke about how we're not funding enough to get proper research done. And yet you also spoke on emerging science that's developing. How are we able to, get better information from emergent sciences if we're not even funding properly currently? So what options or what areas do you think we need to improve upon?
Well, I think, thank you for the question. I do think that when my comments around the total amount of money that we're investing as a country into research and development includes not just government, but also business. So part, I think, of what we need to do as government, if you like, and this was part of my work with the BC government, was how do you create the environment into which you attract companies wanting to invest in IP, in new products, et cetera, here in Canada. So if you look, for example, at the forest industry, and just to give you an example there, I mean, a lot of the companies who are involved in the forest industry here have done very well over the years, but they're really lumber companies. They're exporting lumber. If you look at forestry companies in other countries, then generally they've moved up the supply chain, if you like, and up the value-added chain into chemicals, into fibers, into materials of different types, etc. And that's all because the government, academia, and industry have come together and decided that for Finland or New Zealand or other places, this is really important to the country. And if we're able to bring these groups together, then we can focus on the application to the country, but we can also export. So again, if you look at our natural resource areas, we've generally not developed the ability to export a lot of the expertise that goes around, for example, mining, which in Australia, if you look at the amount of GDP per capita that is contributed by the services that the mining industry provides the rest of the world, is actually greater than the natural resources that are exported from Australia. So we have to be able to use whatever we have in the way of resources in the highest product way possible. And the only way to do that I know is to make that a priority within a province or within a government, and to be able to bring industry, academia, and government together to make sure that all the tools we have support that area that we're going to invest in. I mean, that's really economic development. And I think, that's the piece that we're missing, really, is the context for the investments that we want to make. So may have not answered all your questions, but that's at least part of it.
No, that's actually very good, because you're right. In order to create a more stable economy, you need to build upon what we have. You just can't keep producing our primary products and sending them away. So definitely development is a great opportunity. Ms. Amiot, you had spoken about, applied research and the fact that currently we have not enough equipment in a lot of our institutions. So what areas do you think we need to improve upon, especially same kind of scenario that we're trying to get new science or new technologies built? How can we improve upon this? Is it directly through funding, or is it to specialize in certain areas only?
Thank you for your questions. In fact, in your own...
Could Ms. Amiot raise her mic, please?
The diagnostic center that is associated with Grande Prairie College, and they are doing research for greenhouse. In fact, when I said there's no equipment, I meant the SMEs often do not have the equipment to do applied research. And that's where colleges, in fact, can help. And we know that there's funding from the Canadian Foundations for Innovations to buy equipment. The issue is always to cover the percentage that is not covered, in fact, by CFI. And often our colleges do not have the funds to cover that 40 or 50%, depending on what we're talking about. So that's a huge, huge issue, especially when you are a small institution.
Okay, so that's definitely one area that we need to look at to improve efficiencies or maximize our abilities. I'm not certain how many seconds I have left. 4 seconds, okay. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Soroka. We will now go to Monsieur Lauzon for 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. It's highly appreciated to have you among us. The first question will be for Dr. Kerr. You're just about the only one who spoke about inclusion. You even gave an example at your university. And you also spoke about progress that was achieved in that area in diversity and inclusion in research. But what are the obstacles, and what obstacles do we need to overcome still to achieve objectives of better inclusion in your universities?
Thank you. That's a superb question, and I'm grateful that this has been brought before the committee. There has been an awful lot of progress in the last number of years on this issue, and I think we have seen the stirrings of a revolution in terms of moving toward a more inclusive research environment for everybody in Canada. And, the reasons we want to do this are terribly straightforward. First of all, there's basic justice issues. We don't want to be party to any sort of injustice, and exclusion creates that. That's unacceptable. But You know, from a strategic point of view, inclusion means that we have brought all of our excellence to bear on the problems of our time, and that's important. Things that we really need to do and that have started to take place in very important ways in the Canadian landscape, especially making sure that our entire community is really well informed about what it means to train and to operate a research lab in an inclusive way. There have been some really significant changes that Dr. Duncan, as Minister of Science, oversaw that meant that the way grants are administered means we explicitly recognize that we should train in a thoughtful way that accounts for individual differences as well as potentially systemic obstacles. So that's just one example of progress, and I think that's important. But if we were to point to chief obstacles, I would say that one of the worst things that we have to overcome is bad habits. This is another way of saying this is really that the hardest part of any problem to solve has to do with entrenched cultures of practice that mean that we have developed ways of approaching situations that are simply informed by a bygone era, and we need to revise the way that we think. Microaggressions, for example, can be significant and can essentially be traumatizing for some people. The fact that in some cultures it's actually very difficult to address a question to a senior authority figure means that we need to account for that when we try to understand and reach out and engage with those people. So we need to make sure we keep the pressure on and ensure that in trying to overcome the barriers to a really inclusive research environment, that we're thinking about all of the individuals and all of the excellence that they represent that can help solve problems we all face.
Merci beaucoup pour votre réponse.
Thank you very much for your thorough answer, but there may be one point between the two. Is there a link between inclusion and the difficult path to achieve a high position in research? Is there a link between the two?
Inclusion and achieving success. Well, one of the things that we know is that for very high-ranking people in the academic world, for example, that those people are disproportionately looking like me. They are not people of color disproportionately. There are very few Indigenous leaders in our academic institutions. Some people have argued that this is changing, but I have analyzed that rate of change, as have others. And what appears to me to be happening is that that rate of change is too slow to actually achieve real progress in senior leadership levels within the academic environment. And indeed, in some fields, there's not much evidence of change at all. So if we were to point to achieving senior leadership in some fields like computer science or electrical engineering, for example, the rate of change of representation is really quite low in those environments, and we want to try to accelerate that rate of change. I'd be happy to chat more about this outside of this committee, should you like to engage in further conversation. I'm sorry to take so long.
Thanks a lot for a complete question, but we only have 10 seconds left. I just want to say that it's very difficult to achieve the maximum of to be a chercheur, mais les immigrants là-dedans.
Immigrants, just briefly, immigrants, do they have a role to play?
Absolutely, they do, and we welcome their presence in our community.
Thank you so much, Monsieur Lauzon. Dear colleagues, I'm looking at the time, and I would like to be fair to everyone. What I propose is that I give a question to Monsieur Blanchet-Joncat and a question to Mr. Cannings. Would everyone be okay with that? Terrific. Okay. Monsieur Blanchet-Joncat.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll continue with the questions. A question from Ms. Amiot of College and Institutes Canada. Ms. Amiot, I'd like to get the committee to understand the CCT, or Technology Transfer Centres, which is a Lower St. Lawrence, Quebec innovation for applied research for Bombardier. And right now there are 59 of these CCCTs, or College Technology Transfer Centres, in different regions of Quebec. And in 2010, The Quebec model inspired, among others, Canada to set up a Centre for Access to Technology. But what we know now is that the CCCTs are not yet recognized at the same level as the Centres for Access to Technology in terms of financing federally or in the rest of Canada. The Access to Technology Centres receive $350,000 of financing, and the CCCTs in Quebec only receive. Right. So what can you tell us about this inequity in the financing? Well, it is really an inequity. You're quite right about that. The reason why it's like that is because previously the provinces gave virtually no money for applied research, and that is why it was decided that because in Quebec the CCCTs were already receiving funding, if they became Centres for Access to Technology, they would only receive $100,000 and not the $350,000 because the province was also providing funding. And what we told the government is that, well, listen, that worked a few years ago, but now there are a lot of provinces that are providing applied research funding, and it's unacceptable, on the one hand, in one province, to have the CCCTs, which would become Centres for Access to Technology. They are not all that, but those that do become it should receive the $350,000 for their fair share.
And thank you, Ms. Amiot. And for the last question, we will go to Mr. Cannings.
Well, thank you. And I will continue with Ms. Amiot, a question about applied research. You mentioned how important that was in colleges. In my hometown of Penticton, we have Okanagan College has a renowned sustainable building program, both for research and training. You know, the federal government is looking for ways to quickly expand the construction of new green buildings, the retrofits to buildings across Canada. This is something that perhaps this program could be expanded, or perhaps if the government needed knowledge research results quickly. You mentioned the fast turnaround. Is this the kind of work that the federal government could directly engage with colleges for if they wanted quick answers on specific bits of applied research, or are they doing that now?
They are not, but quick answer is yes, they could, and it would be quick.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Okay, I'll leave it there. It was a quick question.
We are waiting for the request.
Thank you, Mr. Cannings and Ms. Amiot. I want to thank all of you. You've given up your time. This committee is grateful for what you had to say. You've given people a lot to think about. We're grateful for your expertise, so we say thank you. To the committee members, I thank all of you, and to everyone who supports this committee. If we could have 30 seconds of your time as soon as this ends for committee business. 30 seconds. Thank you to our witnesses. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you so much.